So today we are talking about how to avoid the whoops moment, that horrifying moment when you click send and then realize you hit reply all, or you sent it to someone that you didn't mean to because autocomplete filled in for you, or you were BCC'd and didn't realize it. And I think this has only gotten worse, not better, not because we're not good with technology, it's because we have so much of it. And so a lot of times we're using our phones, we accidentally hit something and off it goes. So we're going to look at ways to reduce the whoops moment when at all possible. We wanted to go through a couple of examples of what lawyers are doing that have made headlines. So Anne, what have you read?
Yeah, so in 2003, this is probably the most notorious case that I keep running into, even though it's so old at this point. The New Yorker wrote about it when it first happened. But and a summer associate at Skadden Arps in 2003, he was trying to email a friend of his, and he must have, I think it might have been an issue with autocomplete, where the when he went to type in the to address, I think the wrong address got put in. And he was sending this friend an email that was bragging in pretty explicit language about how little he was doing at work, how they were really whining and dining him, and he was just like getting away with murder. And instead of sending this to his friend, he accidentally sent it to the entire underwriting group at his firm, which was about 40 people, 20 of whom were partners. So that did not go well. But he kept his job, and he's still out there doing very well for himself. But that's certainly a big thing to have to live down. Similarly, in 2017, an attorney accidentally sent privileged documents to a reporter at the Wall Street Journal. And this revealed that Pepsi was being investigated by the SEC, which is pretty big news to send to a reporter accidentally. And again, I think this must have just been an issue with autocomplete where the wrong person got included. And the attorney very quickly emailed the reporter and said, please don't do anything with that. That was a mistake. And they were like, yeah, sure, okay. And they did. Because we all know about it now.
Yes, and oftentimes the reporters will say, well, I didn't learn it from that mistaken email. That happened with another firm and another, I think it was the New York Times. But yeah, this happens more frequently than you can imagine. And I think what happens is you go, well, how many people have reporters in their autocomplete? Well, if you're in a big firm and you're getting emails from reporters to comment on the latest news or whatever, yeah, it could definitely happen. So there's some others that I pulled out just because it's a little bit different scenario. There was one, and it was very unfortunate, the 2-word reply all email. This prosecutor in Atlanta got an email that one of their defendants wasn't going to be able to show up for the court hearing, and hit reply all with the word surprise, surprise. Now this woman, the defendant, was going through stage 4 breast cancer and had a doctor's excuse for why she couldn't come. The response to all the people on both sides was so insensitive that she got suspended for 3 days without pay. So it's not just, it's not just revealing privileged information, it's also just being a jerk, not thinking, and hitting reply all to everybody. And which is why we'll talk about sometimes things don't need to be an email, It doesn't always have to be emailed, but it's the most expedient way, and it's what we default to. Another interesting one, which was the Terraphase case. Terraphase had engineers employed at Arcadis, and these engineers decided to leave the company and form their own competing entity, which never comes out well because after they left, the engineers filed suit against the former employee. Their attorney continued to email one of the engineers at his old account. So he had been communicating with them while they were at Arcadis deciding to leave, and he continued to communicate with the one guy who had left at his Arcadis email account. And of course, they found out what was going on, and then there was a big privilege thing. So that one was just someone left the company and you still have their old email address stuck in your autocomplete, which we're going to learn how to remove that so you don't make that mistake. The other one is kind of a long one. There was but a similar situation. There was an executive for a staffing services company, and he left the staffing services company. Weirdly, the attorney who represented him when he was at the staffing service company then continued to represent him and his old firm. And so obviously conflict came up later in all of this, but at the time it wasn't an issue until, of course, the president chief operating officer of the staffing services company got an email from the lawyer who was representing the former executive, intended for the former executive, talking about the acquisition of a competing staffing service. Well, the guy had a non-compete, so now the lawyer inadvertently revealed to his old company that he's about to go into business competing directly against them 250 miles away. So in advance of anything happening, this was just because of the email, the staffing services company filed a complaint against the former executive for anticipatory breach of his non-compete contract. He hadn't even bought the company. It just got revealed through the attorney. The firm itself had a complaint launched against him by the services company, staffing services company, breach of fiduciary duty because they were still representing both the former executive and the company, and conflict of interest. The complaint against the firm was dismissed, but it's being appealed. And this is in Indiana, just right across the way there. So it gets really thorny. Just because somebody has emailed the wrong person, or they don't look at the autocomplete, or they leave someone's old email address in there. So that's why we're talking about this. It's not just, inadvertent whoops. It can really get expensive and drawn out. And so we're going to look at some of the things that are causing this.
So there tends to be a batch of usual suspects, as you've probably gotten a sense of just from hearing those few anecdotes. Autocomplete is a big one, where you start to type in somebody's email address and another one, or an old outdated email address pops up. Reply versus reply all, that can create a lot of issues. BCC, which Catherine will talk about a little bit more in a minute. But really, what is at the center of most of these issues is a shift in communication that we've seen happen in the past decade or so, where so much of what we do is on email, but it's not always email at our desktop. It's email on our phones when we're in a hurry. Maybe we're on the train and distracted by other things going on around us, and it makes it really easy to make these mistakes without realizing. Especially the reply versus reply all is something that I'm really guilty of only on my mobile. It's never when I'm sitting at my desktop. So really that kind of is at the center of everything. It also, I think poor impulse control is also an issue, especially when we think about the constant accessibility of these emails. They're always reaching us, maybe when we're not in a good moment or we're in a rush, and so we fire off something that is maybe a little meaner than we meant to be. But yeah, so the cell phone issue is really at the heart of all this, I think.
So I know a lot of lawyers BCC their clients on emails to opposing counsel, and I'm not a big fan. I think BCC is incredibly dangerous, and I would recommend that you not do it. There is a New York State Bar ethics opinion that says that a lawyer may blind copy a client on email correspondence with opposing counsel despite the objection of opposing counsel, because a lawyer is the agent of the client. Sending such a blind copy is not deceptive. However, there are practical reasons why the lawyer should consider forwarding the email correspondence rather than using BCC. So you do not BCC, you forward the correspondence. The reason is because if someone is BCC'd, then if they hit reply all, they reply to everybody. It's not like it keeps it hidden. So now opposing counsel knows that you basically included your client on the correspondence. If you forward it, that doesn't happen. So there actually is a case on this, of course. It's Charm versus Cone. And so counsel BCC'd client, and the client hit reply all, and then the client, in addition to hitting BCC, attached privileged documents, and then they had to go through the whole thing with the court on whether the inadvertent disclosure, whether they're going to protect the privilege or not. The court did uphold the privilege, but with a very stern warning. And again, the more you see these things, the more the courts get a little bit less kind about it. So I'm, like I said, not a big fan of BCC. Just forward the email, and then you don't have to worry about having someone hit reply all. Because I frankly got BCC'd on something the other day. I was on my phone. I didn't notice at all. I replied all, and it wasn't confidential or privileged, but it was embarrassing for me and everybody else because it was kind of outing someone saying something negative, of course, because it's never going to be something that's like benign. And I wish I hadn't embarrassed the other party, and I wish the person who sent it had not BCC'd me. But again, on your phone, you're not paying attention.
In workplaces, I think there's a pretty common assumption that younger people have it covered when it comes to technology. Like, they are digital natives, they've grown up with email, they're not the ones making these mistakes. And I don't think that's true. I think it might better their odds of not making a quick mistake, but I definitely, a lot, especially when you look at younger groups, like, who are starting to enter the workforce, I don't think they know the first thing about email. They look at for example, the paperclip attachment icon, which is like the universal symbol for an attachment. They don't know what that means because they've dealt with digital documents their entire lives. They're like, why does that mean attachment? They don't, like, when you look at the save icon that is a floppy disk, they don't know what a floppy disk is. They're like, what's this thing? And so the assumption that younger people or smarter people or people who are just more comfortable with technology, the assumption that they're not going to be the ones making these mistakes is not true. So if you fall into those demographics, it doesn't mean that you don't need to pay attention to this. You still need to be doing the things that we're going to talk about in just a minute.
So that's all the lead up to how do we stop doing this? Because it's a problem. And so we went through from basic best practices that you can do no matter what technology you use to very specific technologies that you can use. So, and what can we do no matter what we're using?
Well, ironically, I think the most effective solution is probably the least technical. I think the best thing that you can do for yourself is get into a habit of making a mental checklist, or maybe even when you start getting into this habit, maybe it's not a mental checklist, maybe it's a physical thing that you check off as you go. And you want to make it a habit so that you do this every time you send an email and you're looking out for certain things. You want to check for the correct recipient and contacts. You want to check for correct reply levels for each recipient included.
What do you mean by levels?
So like the CC, BCC, yeah. You want to check for good structure and tone. You want to be sure that you're not coming across as rude when you don't mean to be coming across as rude. Check for spelling and grammar, and make sure your signature block is there. One thing that I do recommend in addition to this is maybe waiting until you have done all of this, you've run through that checklist and you've typed out your email. Wait until the very end to add that recipient email address to the send field. I think that will really reduce the likelihood of error. And you might some people have sent emails when they're only halfway through typing them out because they've accidentally hit a button. They've hit the wrong thing on their keyboard, and so it sends before they're ready. So that just eliminates that possibility.
Yep, I cannot tell you how many times I hit Control S. I don't even know what my hands are doing.
Yeah.
And off the email flies without being completed. So yeah, the whole concept of emailing, putting the email address in after the fact, will save you when you're sending a new email, but not when you're hitting reply all inadvertently. Right. So some other things that we looked at. One thing, this doesn't have to do with reply all, but we keep talking about autocomplete, and it's in Gmail, and it's in Yahoo, and it's in AOL, and it's in Outlook, and it's in everything, where you start typing in the to-line and it starts suggesting names for you. This is not because the names are in your contacts. It's actually much broader than that. It's anybody you've ever emailed and anybody who's ever emailed you. So it's not pulling from your contacts, it's pulling from every correspondence you've ever had. So how do you get rid of it? we're actually going to show you how. So I'm going to jump into Outlook here. And what you can do to turn this off is you go into File, and the instructions are in your materials, so don't worry. If you have Outlook, you have the instructions, you go into File, then Options, and then Mail, and then you scroll down, because they don't want you to find it, and you keep scrolling until you see under Send Messages, there is a box that is automatically checked that says use autocomplete lists when suggesting names when typing in two CC and BCC lines. You uncheck that box. It will quit suggesting names. Is this a total pain? Yes, it is. Will it reduce the ability for you to inadvertently send it to the wrong person? Yes, it will. So it's a decision that you have to make. You can also, if you feel like I can be good from now on, but I want my autocomplete, click it back on, go over here, empty the autocomplete list. Start building it from scratch, because I'm going to show you another tip you can do. So empty it out, because now you know it's everybody you've ever emailed who's been BCC'd, CC'd, everything. That's a huge amount of information. And what I will show you is if you want to just remove someone's email address. I know that from my phone, I go to email Rebecca Martin, who works here. She used to work somewhere else. I keep emailing her to the old place. So I got to fix my contacts in my phone, which does sync up to my Outlook at work. So if I'm sending an email message and I find that every time I type in Will Hornsby, I know that Will left the ABA and is now enjoying his own practice, and this is his new email address, but here's his old one. So, and it doesn't even show me where it is. So that's very dangerous. So what I want to do is every time I know, I want to look, make sure I know who I'm emailing, but also go, okay, he's not there anymore, and I'm just going to click delete. And now that will never pop up in autocomplete again, and I will not have the opportunity. My husband worked in a quick succession, like 3 different places over 5 years, and I had all his old emails, and I had to go delete them all so I wouldn't email him his old work. So that's one way you can also, without completely eradicating autocomplete, because I know that freaks people out, but you can at least get rid of some of them. The other thing we wanted to show you is how to write a rule that temporarily delays your email in Outlook. So the way Outlook works is when I hit send, it hits this outbox area, and I apologize for my folder problem, but there's an outbox down here. And so the way most Outlooks are set up is that the email I hit send, it passes through the outbox for half a second, and then it goes out into the world. And there's nothing you can do to stop it, except you can write a rule. So we're going to write a rule that says, hold things in my outbox for as long as you want. Because usually you'll hit reply all, or you'll go to send it, and then you have that, what did I just do? It's almost inevitable that you'll have this sinking feeling right after you did it. So you can actually go and write a rule. If you go into the file menu and then go into manage rules and alerts. Okay, I turned it off for you. I'll turn it back on. All right, so manage rules and alerts. I'm going to write a new rule, and then I'm going to say apply this rule on messages I send. Click next. I don't have any specific things to apply, so we'll click next. This says this is going to be applied to every message you send. Is that correct? Yes, it is. And then I'm going to click defer delivery by a number of minutes. You click a number of minutes. You select the number of minutes you want to, so have it held in your outbox for 5 minutes. Is that going to protect you from everything? No. But again, it's usually that what did I just do? I didn't go through my checklist, and it just gives you a second. And then you click on finish, and it says, okay, this rule only runs, when you're in Outlook, but it's going to hold it in that outbox, and so you can get back to it and stop it before it goes out. So that's some of this stuff just basically built into Outlook that you can use.
And just a reminder that there are very detailed instructions for all of that in your notes. Gmail's a little bit of a different story. There is unfortunately no great solution to the autocomplete issue with Gmail. There's no way to turn it off altogether, and your options for even tailoring it are kind of limited. I think the best thing that you can do with Gmail is really stay on top of your contacts a little more than you would otherwise, maybe. Go ahead and delete email addresses when they become irrelevant, like if somebody changes jobs or something. Delete contacts when you don't think you need to email that person anymore. Just the best thing that you can do is really stay on top of that. Gmail does have a really good feature, though, that is called undo send, which is kind of a built-in setting that you can activate instead of like writing a rule like we just did. The disadvantage is that the maximum amount of time that you can, it'll give you a window in which you can say undo, and it'll unsend the email. It'll bring it back. A little button pops up, as you can see on the screen, that just says undo, your message has been sent. The maximum amount of time that you can set that for is 30 seconds. So it's not a huge amount of time, but 30 seconds might be enough to have that like gut instinct of, uh-oh, what did I do? But again, it's not the best.
Yeah, they increased it from 3 seconds, so we should feel like they're being generous to us. 3 seconds is long enough to go, where's the undo? Where? Oh.
And there are step-by-step instructions for how to activate that in your notes.
So we also decided to see what you can do with your phones. So I have an Android phone, and in the native app for Android, I actually found, and again, the instructions are in your materials, you can go in and create a setting in the native email application in Android that holds your email for 30 seconds or down. And so when you hit send, it basically shows a little countdown, and it says sending email. You can cancel sending within the next, and I do 5 seconds because with your phone it's a little bit more intimate. So 5 seconds is quite long enough for me to kind of glance at who I was sending it to and all that stuff, and then you can cancel the email and not have actually sent it at all. So that's something that's built into the Android native email app. In Android, for Gmail for Android, there are instructions, and I think they're the same for the iPhone as well, but you can do something slightly different because you basically have the sent email held until you release it. So I can put together an email in Gmail, hit send, and then it says, do you want to send this message okay? Again, giving you a second to think about, what did I just do? No. It's also useful for, I forgot to say something, or how many of you have ever sent an email and said, please see attached, and you didn't attach anything? That happens a lot. And there's funny little like add-ons for Outlook that'll do all this stuff, but the reality is most of the time we're on our phone, and now because our documents are in Dropbox or OneDrive or wherever, it's really easy to pull the document up on your phone and attach it. Or send a link to it. So that's the kind of thing you can do with your Android phone.
For iPhone users, it's a little bit of a different story again. The native iPhone app for email doesn't really have any viable solutions to this, unfortunately. So you just got to be really careful. On Gmail, in the Gmail app, you still have that undo send option. It looks a little bit different. You can see the screenshot on the screen. The little bar pops up at the bottom, and again, as long as you have to activate it on a desktop, you can't actually activate it within the app. But once it's activated on that account, you can access the undo send feature on your phone.
So lots of different ways to kind of give you a second to realize what you've done. Now, I just read, actually, the lawyer in Indiana who inadvertently sent an email to the CEO of the company when he meant to send it to the former executive that revealed that he was going to build a competing company. That lawyer tried to use Microsoft's recall. So Outlook has this recall button. They have kind of hidden it from you, and it doesn't work. Except, well, it works in the opposite way than intended, because you get a message that says, Catherine would like to recall this message. You go, ooh, I want to see that. So the way recall works is if you were inside an Exchange environment with someone else, so Ann and I, we share the Exchange server. If she has not read the message yet, and I realize that I sent something inadvertently, then I can try to recall it. And if she hasn't read it, it actually removes it from her inbox. So it does work. It doesn't work outside of our Exchange environment. So all you're doing is sending a secondary message saying, you know, alert, alert, somebody sent you something they didn't mean to. So I am not a big fan of even thinking that you have something called recall, because it doesn't usually work, and it gives you a false sense of security.
And when it does work, it still hinges on the recipient having not read the email, which is a pretty significant if.
Yeah, and being inside the firm too.
When it says, tell me if recall succeeds or fails, what exactly does failure or success mean?
Okay, so the question was, when it says whether recall succeeded or failed, what does that mean? So if you get an email back that says message recall succeeded, then in fact the person didn't get your email. But again, that only works inside your company. Microsoft has no way of knowing outside of the Exchange environment whether recall has worked or not. So you can pretty much guarantee it doesn't. And Ann and I actually had just a jolly good time testing these things to see where the failure points were. And so, yeah, again, like BCC, this is not something I'm a big fan of, and thinking that you can recall emails. We also looked at some add-ons because I'm a huge fan of boosting your existing technology when it makes sense and it has a good product on the market. So in this case, there's an add-on that Bob Ambrogi, who is this lawyer turned journalist who writes about legal technology, and I follow his stuff, and if you're interested in legal technology, he's a great person to follow. But he writes a lot about new things on the market, and so he was talking about this application that you add on to Microsoft Outlook called Reply to Some. And so I thought, I'm going to get it and see what it works like. So I did. And then I had a nice conversation with the lawyer who created the product, specifically because of all these stories that were coming out. And so it's $50 for an unlimited license. Like once you get it and install it, it's part of your software until you get rid of your computer, get rid of the that version of Outlook. So $50 is not too much when you see, I think, what it does. So I'm actually going to go again over into Outlook and okay. All right, so I have a couple of things here, and let me undo what I just did. Delete something. So when I go to send a new email, this is when the reply to some starts popping up. So you can see here it has its own little kind of area. And one cool thing is you can create groups. So say you're doing a deal and you've got 3 people in the office that are need to be included on this, and you've got 4 people outside of the office. You can create a new group. So you can see I created a CLE department group, I created a Forum B development group, and when I open the Forum B development, you can see these people are in here. So if I create a group, I'm going to just go in like I was creating a new group. I'm going to call this webinar and then I'm just going to add the people that I know, and it's just integrating with your Outlook autocomplete, oddly enough. That is not the right person, so I'll skip that for now. And okay. So now we have, anytime I want to email this group, I can just put them in here. And so I can type in webinar improvement and it creates the group. Now you start seeing some interesting things. it shows you that these two people, if it's red, it's going outside of your firm. As long as you're in an exchange environment in your firm, if it's red, it goes outside. If it's green, it's inside. So you have this color coding, basically, who's involved in this. Some other things that it does, you can go into settings and intruder alert. So there's a consultant that we work with here all the time, and I don't want him to be considered outside. I mean, he's basically part of our team, so he doesn't need to show up as outside. So I'm going to find him and add him as an insider. I can also say this person who looks like somebody in the firm, I consider an outsider. So somebody, okay, say if you have an ethical wall and you need to make sure that you never CC someone else in the firm, you could create an exception so that they show up as if they were outside the firm. So you know if they show up red, you need to double check that email address and make sure that they're not on there. So intruder alert settings, I thought that was kind of a cute way to phrase it. So now you can see that Brad is green. Because he's basically working with us. So if you had co-counsel, you could make that person green even though they're outside of your firm. Other things that you can do is in the settings, you can create this thing called a send check setting. And if you were BCC'd on the original email and you hit reply all, it pops something up. If the email was sent with an account other than the primary email account, it pops up. So if all of a sudden you're starting to get something from a Gmail account where usually it would be coming from internal, it'll say, this looks weird. Because I know that I have, sometimes I've used my Gmail account and then regretted it because then people email work stuff to my Gmail. And then I have to forward it to myself so I can reply and get it back into, because autocomplete is a terrible thing. And then there's an outsider among at least 2 total recipients. It really depends on how many people you frequently email. So I've got threads going on right now that I think include like 8 people at a time. So I don't need to have this thing pop up every time. But if you tend to keep it small, then you might want to have this pop up that says, hey, you know what? Out of the 2 people you're emailing, one of them doesn't work in the firm. So just depends on. And then they also have a delay send. So if you didn't write the rule, they have that built in as well. So the way, and then the other thing is, if I go to send a new email, I'm going to type in and it's weird, when I type in people's names, I think their name, but the way it shows up here because of the way Exchange works, I have to type in A-H to get Ann. And I know that, but for some reason, I always type in Emily. Well, Emily actually is Ellen Miller, apparently, according to autocomplete. So I'm gonna just see what happens. So just in case this actually goes through. Okay, so it said, I had that little rule that said if there's more than 3 people being emailed, check me, please. So it basically pops up this thing and says, okay, Beth Green, she's internal, she's good to go. I don't know who this Ellen Miller is. So what do you want to do? We're going to drag Ellen over to good to go, and we could go ahead and hit send, or we can go, oh, Ellen does not mean to be in there. So we put her in a trash can. Again, it's just kind of stopping and making you check this kind of thing. So it'll hit cancel there. The other thing is, and if I reply to where I'm BCC'd, it'll pop up a little thing that said, did you want to reply all to something you were BCC'd in, which is very helpful. The other thing that I'm finding really useful is this message threading. So I've had this email stuff going on with I mentioned I have all these people So it goes over and it looks, and this is a thread that has been going on for a couple of days. It's gotten really hairy. I can't remember what's being said to whom, when, or what, which happens with email. So it shows me who's involved, but it also has this thing called a thread alert. And so you go, okay, what's that? If I click on it, it says, we found more than one email address has changed in the original participants of this conversation. Somebody's been added or removed. So in this case, it says, on this date, at this time, this person added one address. If I click view changes, it highlights the change. So now Nick has been added to this thread. So it gives you this intelligence about what's going on that I would never have noticed. That, because all of this is going fast and furious and there's so many people in this thread. You can also look at a history. So we can see from I told you this has been going on for a while. From the beginning of this thread, every time something changed in terms of recipients, it shows me a little cautionary, and I can go and see who got dropped, who got added, all of that kind of stuff. So I think it's very useful, because if you used Outlook to try to track that, it would take a long time. So again, if you're emailing with a whole bunch of people, this kind of thing I think is very helpful, keeping you from inadvertently making a mistake. So that's that add-on. Again, it's $50. You still have to pay attention, but it does give you a little bit more intelligence about your sending and receiving behaviors, and then it actually does pop up and stop you if you've set it up to do that. So reply to some, again, it's $50 for a single install. There is a free version. The reason I didn't tell you that is because it's free for personal use, and none of you are falling under that if you're using this for work email. There's another one, Donna Payne has the Paynes Group in Washington State. They have been around. They have great products, mostly focused on, remember when everybody freaked out about metadata and sending documents with track changes and comments and all the information about the document, and then the Bar Association started writing ethics opinions about it, and it's basically, we are covered under inadvertent disclosure, so nobody in this state wrote an opinion to glom on, but there are lots that did. Anyway, she has a cool Outlook add-on that basically, if you attach a document, it scrubs the metadata for you. So, and it's $50. She now has a tool for $50, and it's really straightforward. If you send an email and it's someone outside of your Exchange environment, it pops up and says, do you really want to continue to do this? If you hit reply all and you were BCC'd, it says, do you really want to do this? So it's two things. Unfortunately, neither of these add-ons work on your phone. But if you spend a lot of time in front of your computer on Outlook, they're just nice ways to kind of stop you potentially from doing things. And that one is $45. So again, may or may not be all that good. I know we're ignoring Gmail, and there's a reason for that. Not because I don't like Gmail, but most people are writing business type of add-ons and feature sets for Outlook. Gmail has really just entered the workforce, and so people are still trying to, create those add-ons. This one, though, is a Gmail add-on. It's free, and it's called Boomerang. It has a totally different use case, which is my favorite is if I send someone an email through Gmail, I can say, if the person does not respond within this amount of time, boomerang it back into my inbox. So I actually go, what the heck, why aren't you responding to me? And I do have an Outlook add-on for that as well. But what we thought was kind of interesting is that there's also a little thing, and I took a screenshot of it, where it pops up how respondable your email is. And so it's not going to keep you from emailing the wrong person, but it does kind of help you go, okay, is the subject length good? Is it too many words? Because if you send someone today sent me like a 14 paragraph email, and I still didn't know what they wanted by the end of it. So this would help you with that, but also just anything that kind of stops and makes you think. And grading you on your email writing ability, we thought was an interesting one. There are two practice management applications I specifically wanted to point out. because if you're using practice management, it has a lot of benefits besides just this. It helps you kind of track and keep all of the information about the matter, the emails, the documents, the time tracking, the invoicing, the trust accounting, task, everything about a particular matter in one application. So these are, Smokeball, Clio, Rocket Matter, MyCase, Zola Suite. There's lots and lots on the market. Just depends on which one works for your practice. But Zola Suite came out and they had built email into their product, and I thought, well, no one else has done that. Why would you do that? That doesn't make any sense. Everybody's got email covered. You've got Outlook, or you've got Gmail, or you've got whatever. I will show you why it's actually quite useful. So this is their interface, and they have email built into the interface. If you go to Compose, again, I'm doing this within my practice management system. I'm not going to Outlook to send it and then, hooking the email back into it. I'm doing it directly from there. So if I type, first off, you have to select the matter, which is a little different of a paradigm. So if I type in this matter, you can actually type the name. Okay, so this is the matter. You can also see it's starting to track my time, which you don't have to bill for, but it does track the time for the matter when you're generating the email. When I click 2, that's where it gets interesting. So I've selected the matter. This isn't a random email, and you can send a random email. You don't have to attach a matter, but it shows me everybody who's in the database related to the matter and what their relationship is. Well, it turns out that Michael Hamilton and Michael Boyer, and if you had autocomplete working for you, they'd probably come up right next to each other. But this color codes it so that this Michael is your client and this Michael is the prosecutor. So again, it just helps keep you from inadvertently sending this. This is all hooked up to an Outlook account that I have. If you had a Gmail, it's pretty easy to set up. So I thought that that Zola Suite's integration of email, instead of just going, okay, use whatever you have, was interesting. The other application that I think has done a great job is something that integrates directly with Outlook, but they also have this kind of email dashboard. So if you go to Smokeball and you click on email, you also get this opportunity to click on email, add the people, it shows you the party, it shows you the relationship to the matter, and then you click on send. Again, it makes it much, much harder to let autocomplete think for you. You don't have to sit there and go internal, external. That doesn't even have any meaning for me in my practice. This kind of thing, again, shows you direct relationship to the matter. And, then the cool thing with both of these is in your matter dashboard, all of those emails are related to the matter. So you don't have Outlook over here storing all your emails, and then when you're finished with the matter, you go, okay, now I've got to zip it up into a PDF and move it over to the closed files or whatever. It's all of your email is falling into the matter. So, and I don't have Smokeball to show you, but I'll show you in Zola. If you go to your matter dashboard, let's see, somewhere in here, the matter dashboard has all of the information about that particular matter for you. So if you go over into a particular matter, and Smokeball does this too, you'll see all contacts, events, tasks, notes, communications, emails, communications under emails, documents, everything. For one thing, Microsoft Office does not do that. They do not organize things by client matter. And so that's why I'm a big fan of practice management for a variety of reasons. So other products similar to that. Now Clio and Rocket Matter, neither one of them have that kind of depth of integration where it shows you the relationship to the matter. They do both have Office 365 integration and Outlook add-ons. and it will pop up a little thing and say, who are you billing this to? Again, it just makes you stop and think, who am I billing this to? And then checking the contacts and making sure that you're doing that kind of thing. It's not quite as nifty as Zola and Smokeball, but it does give you a fighting chance. So the last thing I would suggest is don't send email. Email is not the most efficient way to communicate. There's lots of other ways to do this. It depends on your practice area. Phone calls sometimes work. I would always suggest for a phone call, because it's hard to find people in a position to actually talk on the phone, send them an email and ask if they have time to talk. Or when you call someone, say, hey, do you have a minute? If not, can we schedule something? And just take it to the phone. Sometimes that works more effectively. If you have a document management system, send messages through the portal. Like NetDocuments has a portal. A lot of the practice management products have portals. Office 365 has teams and groups. There's, whether it's internal communication or external communication or communicating with people from all around, there's lots of options. Has anyone used Slack? So Slack is this tool that all of the, pretty much all business except for lawyers are using. And it's kind of a combination between like a chat tool, but you can integrate it with things like Google Drive so that I can add an attachment. Or Ann and I communicate through a tool called Asana, and it's a project management tool. So our emails aren't random. Assigning an email to something when there's other work happening, often email kind of lives in its own space, and then you've got all the work happening somewhere else. So anytime I can pull it all together, that's kind of what I'm thinking. And so again, depends on who you're serving, but if you're dealing with business clients, I'm guaranteeing at this point they're all feeling the pain of email and trying to figure out other tools to use. And so I think we're going to be in a post-email age in the next 10 years. That's my hope and
the dream.
Yes. So thanks. If you have any questions, let us know. Again, with the materials, you've got instructions for these things, links. Okay. Any questions online?
Nope.
And in your materials, obviously, Ann and I are both here to answer questions that you have if you were reticent to ask them out loud, or if they are tangential to the conversation today. We are always here to help. We love to do that, actually. It's the most fun to actually have somebody who has a specific situation to help solve. So that's why we're here, and we appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Where do you plan on teaching